As I stood there in the server room, I could feel the goosebumps go up and down my arms. And the cold of a server room was familiar to me, but I wasn't expecting to be there that day. And as I stood, feeling the sponginess of the false floor under my feet, I was aware of the two male voices that were talking to me, telling me about the upcoming changes that weekend. I know that they were talking and what they were talking about, but all I could think of in my head was, I'm not going to need to worry about this. This isn't going to be my problem next weekend. Someone else will have to deal with it because I'm not going to be here. Because that morning, I had already planned my escape plan. You see, as I was getting ready to come into work, I slipped my passport into my handbag. And my plan was to go into work, tidy up a few loose ends, and then get a taxi to the airport and a plane ticket on the next international flight, regardless of where it was going. I hadn't told my colleagues, I hadn't packed any luggage, and I hadn't told my husband. So before I get too much more into this subject, I just want to remind people that burnout is not depression. I'm not a qualified health professional, and there are some mental health issues where we have chemical imbalances in our brains that need the help of some medication. So if you do have any concerns, I strongly encourage you to go and seek some professional advice, because there are some mental health issues that you just can't therapy your way out of. So let's go back to how I was feeling back then. In my life, everything felt really dull and grey. I didn't get enjoyment from anything. I was pretty much just existing, going through the motions. I had a lot of trouble switching off. So if I did take some time away from my phone or my computer, I still felt on edge. It was really hard to disconnect myself mentally from the work that I was doing and the impact of that work. In fact, I go so far as to say I actually had an emotional reaction. If I got an SMS or an email on my phone, my heart would sink. I'd get really wound up about the messages that were coming through on my phone. When we go through things like this, what's happening is our body and our brains are literally trying to shut us down to stop us from doing what we're doing to ourselves, to prevent us from putting ourselves in those situations. Some people might get tremors or shakes, and that might be some of the signs or symptoms that they notice in themselves. I didn't get that, but what I did get was I had a lot of trouble falling asleep at night. And then when it was time to wake up in the morning, it was such an effort to drag myself out of bed. So what does that look like to the people around us? Did my colleagues notice that any of this stuff was going on in my world? And what do we need to look out for in the people around us? The thing is, we expect that burnout and someone who's having a rough time, we expect it to look like this. We expect those physical signs and symptoms of somebody having a bit of a meltdown, throwing up their hands in the air and looking like they're not coping. Sometimes burnout looks like this, especially in our IT industry with high-performing individuals who just go in and get the work done. Burnout can look like coping. It can look like you have a smile on your face and you're turning up and doing the things you need to do. Makes it a little hard to spot. Now, our brains are absolutely incredible, and they use a lot of the energy reserves that we put into our bodies. In fact, our brains use about 20% of all the energy that we put into this machine of ours. Uses a little bit more when you're sitting, listening, and taking in new information, and that's a little bit of a tip. If you've ever wondered why at the end of a day like this, or the end of a day in general being an attendee at a conference, you feel absolutely exhausted, all you've done is sat down and listened to people, it's because your brains have been using all of that energy to take in new information and to save it into memories. This machine of ours, the CPU that controls our body, does some interesting things when we get stressed. So the hippocampus starts diverting some of those glucose from our brain and sending it to our muscles. Why? Because with stress, we have this fight or flight response. So it's gearing our bodies up to either flight or get the heck out of that situation. Because of this, we get a depression, we get less of the hormones going around our brain, like our serotonin and our dopamine, and the neuroreceptors also get dulled in there as well. And this happens when we're under stressful situations. It's harder for us to make short-term memories, and in short, this is the reason why when we're stressed, we make really dumb decisions. There's actually a chemical factor into it. That might come out as a decrease in performance. You might see somebody who isn't quite on top of their game, or they're making mistakes that are outside the norm of them. You might notice little signs in their work. It could be that they're grumpy and irritable, okay, more than normal, if they're that kind of a person, all right? But it could be that little things that normally wouldn't get to them are making them react or snap a little bit. They could also start to withdraw. Now, I know IT people aren't all the extroverted life of the party type of people. So again, it's about having a look at what somebody's normal is. Doesn't mean that they're the person in the team that's never showing up for Friday night drinks, if that's not a situation they're normally comfortable in. But especially look for signs like them not contributing into your group chats or your group emails, even that kind of work-related interaction that you have with people. When you're burnt out, it can be really hard to actually step in and have a voice and feel like your contribution's worthy. And we can also default to this very dull attitude and using phrases like, it doesn't really matter. It's only my opinion. It's not a big deal. Really downplaying their role in the team and acting like, you know, it doesn't really matter to them either way what happens. So I love how Chris made you all put up your hands first because he's a lot braver than I am. What I like to do when I give this talk is introduce you to the invisible hand raise. Now, I hate it when speakers ask you to put your hand up, and I know quite a few of our speakers today have done it. There's a couple of reasons why as a speaker we use that technique. One, it helps us know our audience better so we can craft our talk on what we're saying around the people in the room and the roles that they've got. But there's another cool scientific thing that comes with putting up your hand. When you do a physical action in alignment with something new that you've learnt, it actually helps to cement that memory in your mind better. But admitting that you have experienced burnout or admitting that your colleagues might have some of the symptoms you've seen could be a little bit embarrassing in a room like this if you don't know everybody. So I'm going to get you to do an invisible hand raise. And when I say go, I want you to picture yourself raising your hand if you're not comfortable doing it in public. If you identify with any of those signs or symptoms that I've talked about so far, or you've seen them in your colleagues, okay? Go. Thanks. So how can you help yourself if you are feeling some of those signs or symptoms? What do you do to get help? I'm going to give you 3 easy steps, okay? Super simple. Tweet them out. Life-changing stuff. Ready? Green kale smoothies, yoga on the beach, and holidays with your dog. Right? Awesome. The thing is that we might think that this is all it takes. This is what society tells us for having a happy and healthy, wonderful life. Just get all this stuff in balance and life will be amazing, all right? Now, I don't want to downplay these 3 things because they are still important. When we get stressed and burnt out at work, one of the first things that happens is we stop eating well, right? And so these 3 things are important, but it's not as simple as 3 easy steps. The other thing that we tell people is just talk to someone. Just go and talk to someone. Like if you're not feeling great, talk to someone about it, right? It's really not that easy. when you are feeling burnt out, the last thing you want to do is have a conversation about it, especially to your boss or to your HR department. Because if you go and tell your workplace that you're struggling and you're having issues doing your work, how well is that going to go down with the people who pay your salary and give you promotions? We find it really hard to do that. And so what I want to encourage you to do is to find your tribe. I want you to make sure that you have some close friends. Doesn't necessarily have to be family. Doesn't necessarily have to be a whole lot of people, but a couple of people who know you and know you really well, who know you well enough that they can ask you how you're travelling because they can see those changes in your behaviour patterns. These are some of my best girlfriends, a couple I met after the Brisbane floods when I was volunteering with the SES. One of them is a school mum that I met. Our kids go to school together. And I don't see these ladies very often, even though we're all in Brisbane, we've got really busy lives. But I chat with them on Facebook Messenger several times a day. And these girls know what's going on in my world and if I'm not travelling so well. We also talk about this wonderful work-life balance. You know, my generation's been talking about it for a while. Again, sounds a lot simpler than it is. My tip for work-life balance is I want you to take a longer-term view. You can have it all. You might not just have it all in the same week. So with work-life balance, I want you to be where you are. Now, my week this week, my Saturday, I was in my office at home preparing some content for an event. So I was working all day Saturday. You could turn around and go, your work-life balance sucks if you had to work all day Saturday, right? But on Thursday morning, I'm going to be at my daughter's primary school because she's receiving an award, and I'm going to be sitting there watching her go up on the stage. Now, to me, that's a pretty cool work-life balance. It's about a flexibility, and it's about being able to concentrate on her when I'm at the school awards and knuckle down on work when work needs to be the focus. This photograph was taken in Disneyland, and it's kind of the Australian, New Zealand family dream to one day take the kids to Disneyland. My parents saved every cent they could and took me and my sister when I was 15 years old, and I said one day I'm going to bring my kids to Disneyland. About almost 2 years ago now, my husband ended up having emergency brain surgery because he had a sudden brain aneurysm. Now, he made a full recovery after that, and we sat down and had a very interesting conversation about, you know how you say that you'll do these things one day? One day we'll take the kids to Disneyland. Newsflash, there might not be a one day. And that was a pretty big wake-up call for my family to turn around and go, we need to make this happen while we know that we're around and this can be a thing. So we saved every cent we could. It did involve a lot of extra hours of me working nights and weekends on some freelance stuff to build up the holiday fund. But I tell you, when we were in Disneyland, I was with my family. And that was the swings and roundabouts for that work-life balance. Find some other interests outside of work. And look, I honestly don't mind if your interests are sitting down gaming with your online gaming friends. Like if that's your thing, go for it. I volunteer with the SES, and so I get to do cool things like when I'm not putting a tarp on someone's roof in the pouring rain, I get to go to community events like this and hang out with stormtroopers. So again, for me, it's completely different from sitting in a computer. I have a whole different community of friends, and I get to use my brain in other interesting ways that don't involve IT, except when I'm fixing the IT problems at my SES group. But I do try and avoid that. And another thing I want to ask you to do is to watch how you're framing your answer to this question. When I get asked in a work context, can you do something? Can you do this? Sonia, can you do this? My immediate gut framing of my answer is, am I capable? Can I do it? Am I able to do the thing that's being asked of me? And that's generally how I will answer. What I want you to do is catch yourself, if you're like me, to frame it to, do I have the capacity? Can you do this? Let me have a look. What else have I committed to? What other deadlines have I got coming up? When am I traveling? Can I fit this into the other commitments that I've already made? We also need to tame these digital attention seekers. Now, I'm a big fan of Twitter. I've met a ton of really cool people when I first got onto the platform because I stalked the Microsoft Tech Ed conference hashtag and started talking to people who were at that conference because I couldn't make it that year. So I'm not going to tell you about how bad screen time is or that you should put your phone away more. I mean, we all should probably do that, right? But anyway, what I'm going to ask you to review though is how your phone is asking for your attention. This is my home screen, and one of the things you will notice on there is that only 2 apps have an unread badge on them. 2 apps on that screen tell me if there are new messages, and that's Twitter and Microsoft Teams. So one thing you can see there that doesn't have that badge is Outlook, my email program. I call it Schrodinger's inbox. Because until I go in there, I don't know whether I've got new emails or I don't have any new emails, right? There could be, there couldn't be. I have Schrodinger's inbox on my phone, and the reason I did that was because I woke up on a Saturday morning and I work in a global team. So my boss is in Redmond, most of my colleagues are in North America or Canada, and my Saturday morning is their Friday and their Friday afternoon. So they're all busy working away. So I wake up on a Saturday morning about 2 or 3 weeks into this team, and I have 21 on that unread badge. 21 new emails in my inbox, and it's supposed to be my weekend, and I'm not supposed to be working, and it is killing me to go, what the heck has gone on while I've been asleep that I've got 21 new emails? So from that day on, I turned off that unread badge. And now whenever I look at my phone, especially if it's a Saturday, because I might pick it up to do whatever else you do on your phone on the weekend, you know, your phone's not a work device purely anymore. I don't know now if I've got emails or not, and I'm quite happy with not knowing. I can live with that if I don't have this darn 21 looking me in the face. And the only app that I get a notification for on my phone is SMS messages. Right? There are not many people in the world these days that send me a text message. If they do, it's super urgent and it's really important. Everything else can wait. My friends and family know if they need to get hold of Sonia urgently, they don't send me a Facebook message, they send me a text message. Pretty old school. Just helps me, stop being distracted by my phone so much. Oh, and the other thing you might have noticed is there, apart from Twitter, there are no social media apps on that. Now, I could not survive without social media apps on my phone, I have to confess. But what I do is I put them on the second page. So if I want to go into Facebook or Pinterest or Instagram or whatever, I have to swipe the whole page over, go into a group and click on that app. It's a little bit more inconvenient for me than having those social media apps staring at me from the front screen of my phone. I also want to let you know that if you are struggling with work stuff, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go and quit your job or get off the team or be asked to take off the project. Absolutely, it is a viable option to have a chat with your boss about maybe restructuring some of the work that you're doing. That might mean having some time when you work from home. It might be changing your day so that you come in earlier in the morning and you leave earlier in the afternoon so you don't get caught up in traffic snarls. Okay? We have all of these modern technologies available to us today to help manage workload and to help restructure your day and the work that you're doing. And you also have to be careful of rebound. if you've been through this before and you've worked your way out of it and you feel that you are on top of things, even if you've changed jobs and gone to a completely different employer, this stuff can creep back up again and you can go into those feelings again. Some of the techniques that I use now, I've got a membership at the local gym, and sometimes during the day, because I have a flexible working arrangement, I'll have an 11 o'clock, group class at the gym. Not because I'm interested in, the exercise or any of the benefits like that. It's literally for my mental health. I get out there and I go and do something that's not IT, especially that becomes even more important if I feel that my work's getting a little bit on top of me. Technical people like data. We hate talking about topics like this, where it's kind of touchy-feely and it's kind of really hard to measure. So here in Australia, we have this great website called mycompass.org.au. You can go and sign up for a free account and it will help you benchmark how you're feeling about life. It'll help you benchmark your mental health. And the great thing about that is if you go and do that now, if you decide to make some lifestyle changes, or if you're going through a big, tough project at work maybe, you can then go ahead and redo that in the future and see whether or not anything's shifted in terms of that profile. It's a really good tool for giving you a little bit more data as to how you're travelling and the impact that any change is going to have on that. I love the community that we have in our industry. And I love the fact that we are talking about things like burnout and mental health a lot more. I got tapped on the shoulder to talk about this at Microsoft Ignite in Florida when I was having some conversations on Twitter about it. And a Microsoftie sent me a DM and said, would you come and talk about this in Florida? Now, when Jeff asked me to do that, he didn't know I was interviewing for a role at Microsoft. I didn't have a blue badge then. I told him I had to check with my new boss and I gave him my news, but that spoke volumes to me that a company like that would include this as a topic at their biggest conference with 25,000 people in attendance, that we appreciate that it's a problem in our industry. And the thing is, we see it in society, we see all the big headline news about the people that make the papers that have gone through depression or suicide, and yet, it's an issue that creeps up in our very own workplaces. And we want to help each other out, right? We want to know what to do. You can start by being a good example, especially if you manage people. They need to see you taking your annual leave. They need to see you saying, I'm going to take tomorrow off because I need to go fishing, or I need a break. I'm going to take a mental health day and I'm going to go and do something completely different. The more that you say in a team context, when you're not traveling so well and the things that you're doing to address it, it makes it okay for other people too, as well. Okay, so you need to lead by example. Be a defender in your organisation. One of the things that we always struggle with is we're being asked to do so much now, so quickly, with less resources than we had before, and everybody's stressed about it. So if you see things like that in your workplace, speak up about it. Push back on that stuff. Hit the boss up if they really are unrealistic deadlines. And it might not be for your benefit. It might be because you see that there are other people struggling in the team who don't feel like they have a strength and confidence in their voice right now to speak up about things like that. And we also need to start valuing other types of contributions in our workforce. So it's really easy for us to turn around and say, this person's a rock star, like they've delivered talks at 10 different conferences, how amazing are they? And yet there is so much else that goes into the production of the work that we do that's equally as valuable, that's not quite rock star shiny. And that could be things like writing documentation or doing some really good testing, automating some of that testing. There are other contributions in there that we need to turn around and go, this person did a great job because that work is epic, not because they were on stage. I want you to stomp out superhero statements. Yeah. Look, I've worked in operations, and so this is we've worked for the last 36 hours straight to recover the system. We've coded all night long to meet this shipping date, right? All of these things that we say that we've done, because in some respects they do deserve an acknowledgement of effort, and they are things that we do all the time. But if you hear that, I want you to turn around and say, that's terrible. What can we do to stop that from ever happening again, right? If you have been in situations like that, sit down and have a debrief and a post-incident review with somebody and literally go, what do we need to do to prevent that in the future? Because burnout is not a badge of honour, but it's not a badge of shame either. When we're asking somebody how they're doing and we want to help them out, how do we go about that? It's kind of awkward. And we've got this great organisation in Australia that promotes this issue by saying, are you okay? Now, I don't know about you, but my sort of default reaction to somebody asking me if I'm okay is saying, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm good. It's fine. Nothing to see here. Move along. So instead, I'm going to give you some tough questions to ask. Things like, I've noticed you're not quite yourself lately. Can we talk? Okay? That puts a little bit more responsibility on you, the helper, to say, I think something's not quite right here. Do I have your permission to open up a conversation? Tell me specifically what happened last week. This gets away from the are you fine, how are you feeling stuff and moves more into what's going on in your world right now. And then maybe a how are you feeling about next week? What's coming up on your radar that you're concerned about? Okay, I'll let you snap those. So here are some better questions to ask our colleagues. And if you find somebody who's going through a tough time, especially if you are their manager, it's a natural instinct to parent somebody who's struggling. We want to take the bad thing away. And so we normally do that by taking away some of their workload, right? We think we're helping them out. We're taught to walk in somebody else's shoes. Put yourself in their shoes. Don't do that. You put yourself in somebody else's shoes, it's still you, you're just wearing different shoes. So instead, I want to encourage you to ask the person, what matters the most to them right now? Now, this comes from a guy called Brady Wilson. He's got a TEDx talk on how to fix the exhausted brain. And he says that in any situation, there are 5 things that our brain might need to help bring us out of exhaustion. One of them is a sense of meaning, knowing that what we are doing is important, knowing that the work has value and it's going to achieve a result for someone, feeling like what we're doing is meaningful. The other is belonging. Do I feel like I'm part of the team? Do I get the jokes and do I feel like this is my family? Or is everything just going over my head and I'm not feeling included? Do I need a better sense of security? Do I need more guidance and guide rails and direction around what I'm working on? Because it just feels all too vague. Or maybe I need some more freedom. Maybe I'm being far too constrained in and I'm trying to do stuff and I want to push the envelope, but I'm just not getting supported. And the last thing is significance. Do I matter in the team? Am I valuable and am I important for what I'm doing and what I bring to the table? And these kind of things vary depending on the person and the situation. You can flip from one to another depending on what situation they're in. But there was a story about a manager who had taken some workload off somebody who was suffering from burnout and things just weren't getting better and he couldn't understand why. So he had this kind of a conversation and said to the person, you know, what matters the most to you right now? And she said, I don't feel challenged enough. The work that I'm doing is pretty mundane and boring and I'm just tired of it. And when I come and I talk to you about how I'm feeling, you just take more work away from me. So he started giving her the challenging tasks, the harder stuff for her to really sink her teeth into, and she shone. absolutely lifted her game, loved her job again. And it was because this was what she was saying. It wasn't that she wanted less work, she just wanted something a bit more challenging. So now you get to really raise your hand. What I would like to see from you is a commitment that you will either implement one of these things to help improve your own life, or you'll implement one of these steps the next time you see one of your colleagues needing some help. All right, go. Epic. That's awesome. Okay, so finally, I think people kind of wonder what happened in that gap between Sonia with a passport and a handbag ready to flee the country and Sonia standing on stages around the world talking for Microsoft. It started with a simple step. It wasn't an easy step, but basically what I did was after that meeting in the server room, I went and found an empty meeting room and I sat down and I picked up my phone and I called my husband. And I said to him, I don't know what you're doing right now, but you need to stop. You need to come and pick me up and you need to take me home. Thanks.